John Murphy sat in his office on Luna Base, watching Earth through the reinforced window. The blue planet hung in the black void like a marble. He sipped his coffee and flipped through report files on his tablet. The mining operation on Mars was ahead of schedule. The new colony on Europa was dealing with equipment issues. Nothing he couldn't handle. His screen flashed with an incoming call. Priority level. Urgent. John sighed and accepted the transmission. Olivia Daniels appeared on screen. Her normally neat brown hair was messy, and her blue eyes were wide with worry. As Earth's only representative to the Galactic Council, she always dressed formally. Today her collar was crooked. "Admiral Murphy," she said, her voice slightly higher than normal. "The Council just finished voting." John took another sip of coffee. "I'm guessing it didn't go our way." The Carlaxians pushed through their war declaration against humanity. 78 votes for, 3 against. Only the Arcturans and the Proxima Centauri delegation stood with us. John raised an eyebrow. After 50 years of dealing with alien species, very little surprised him anymore. War, huh? Are they mobilizing their fleets? Olivia shook her head. Not yet. It seems mostly political at this stage. Any trade sanctions, blockades, bounties on human ships? No, nothing like that so far. John nodded slowly. So they declared war but aren't actually doing anything about it. The Carlaxian ambassador gave a long speech about human expansion threatening galactic stability. Called us dangerous primates playing with technologies beyond our understanding. The usual stuff. John checked his watch. It was almost time for his meeting with the Luna defense team. "Olivia, send me the full recording and any documentation. I'll inform the President and the Joint Chiefs." What should I tell the Council? They're expecting some kind of official human response. John thought for a moment. Tell them we acknowledge their declaration and will respond formally in due time. That's it. For now, yes. Let's see what they actually do before we change any of our operations. Olivia looked uncertain but nodded. I understand. Daniel's out. The screen went dark. John finished his now cold coffee and stood up. He walked to the window and stared at Earth. Nearly 10 billion humans lived there, with another 5 billion spread across Mars, Venus cloud cities, the Moon, and various stations and settlements throughout the solar system. Most of them would go about their day without knowing or caring that some aliens in a distant space station had voted to declare war. John's personal communicator buzzed. It was a message from his wife, Linda, reminding him about their dinner plans that evening. He smiled and sent back a quick "I'll be there" response. The intercom on his desk chimed. "Admiral, the defense team is ready for you in conference room 3. On my way," John replied. He took one last look at Earth before leaving his office. Humanity had survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, climate disasters, and its own nuclear weapons. They'd rebuilt, adapted, and kept moving forward. They'd reached the stars not through some magical technological leap, but through stubborn determination and countless small steps. And now some aliens thought they could intimidate humans with a piece of paper. John smiled to himself as he walked down the corridor to his meeting. The Galactic Council had existed for thousands of years, governing hundreds of species across the Milky Way. They had protocols and procedures for everything. They expected fear, panic, or at least serious concern from the humans. They were about to learn that humans didn't react to threats the way other species did. As John entered the conference room filled with military officers waiting for his arrival, he decided the war declaration was item number 3 on his agenda. After the Europa equipment issues and the Mars mining report. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said to the room, "we have a few matters to discuss today. But first, it seems the Galactic Council has officially declared war on humanity." He paused as surprised murmurs filled the room. Now, about those equipment failures on Europa. 2 weeks passed since the Galactic Council declared war on humanity. The news had spread through Earth and its colonies, but life continued without much change. In the massive shipyards of Detroit, ships still rose into the sky every day. Susan Miller walked through the construction bay, checking things off on her tablet. As chief engineer, she oversaw the building of civilian trading vessels. The sound of welding and machinery filled the air. Workers moved around her, focused on their tasks. "Chief Miller," a voice called out. Susan turned to see Kyle Bennett running toward her. Kyle was her assistant, young and always excited about something. Today, his face looked more worried than usual. "What is it, Kyle?" Susan asked, still marking things on her tablet. Kyle caught his breath. The war declaration just hit the public channels. Everyone's talking about it. Susan looked up. And the Galactic Council declared war on us. The Sarlaxians got 78 species to vote against humanity. Susan sighed and looked back at her tablet. "Are they blocking our supply routes?" Kyle blinked in confusion. "No." "Are they attacking our colonies or outposts?" "No, not yet." "Then we keep building ships." Susan walked past him toward the framework of a half-finished cargo vessel. "The Henderson family on Mars still needs their hauler by next month." Kyle followed her, looking frustrated. "Shouldn't we be worried? Or at least doing something different?" Susan stopped and looked at the young man. "Kyle, I've worked here for 22 years. In that time, we faced 3 global economic crashes, a near-miss asteroid, and that weird alien plant that almost ate Cleveland. Not once did we stop building ships." She pointed up at the cargo vessel taking shape above them. "The Hendersons saved for 5 years to afford this ship. It's how they'll make their living, moving goods between Mars and the outer colonies. War or no war, people still need to work and live." Kyle seemed to think about this. "I guess you're right." "Of course I'm right. Now a check on Bay 4. They're installing the navigation systems today." As Kyle walked away, Susan's communicator buzzed. It was a message from her wife, asking if she would be home for dinner. Susan smiled and sent back a simple yes. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., Defense Secretary Alan Wright sat in the Oval Office with President Diane Powell. The president looked more tired than worried. "So that's the situation." Alan finished his report. "Minor skirmishes near Saturn's moons, but nothing serious. The Sarlaxians seem to be testing our defenses rather than mounting a full attack." President Powell nodded. "And our response? We've increased patrols along the major trade routes. Admiral Murphy has repositioned the 4th Fleet to cover the outer system. Beyond that, we're maintaining normal operations." The president stood up and walked to the window. Outside, tourists took pictures of the White House, unaware of the discussion happening inside. "If they want war," she said quietly, "they should at least have the courtesy to show up for it." Alan smiled. "That's what I told the Joint Chiefs this morning." "What do our intelligence reports say about their actual capabilities?" Alan opened another file on his tablet. "The Sarlaxians talk big, but their military is stretched thin across multiple borders. They were counting on other council species to join the fight, but so far no one seems eager to commit actual resources." "So this is all political," the president said. "Yes, Madam President. They wanted to scare us into giving up our expansion into the Orion Arm. They didn't expect us to simply ignore them." President Powell laughed. "They really don't understand humans, do they?" "No, they don't. They expected panic in the streets, emergency sessions of Congress, maybe even surrender talks. Instead, they get business as usual," the president said. "All right, keep the patrols increased for now. If they decide to turn this theatrical war into a real one, I want to be ready." "Yes, Madam President." As Alan left the Oval Office, his phone showed a notification. His son's baseball team had made the playoffs. War or no war, he wouldn't miss that game. Across Earth and its colonies, humans went about their lives. They built ships, grew food, taught classes, fell in love, argued politics, and planned vacations. The war was just another headline, somewhere below local sports and weather. 3 months passed since the war declaration. The only sign of actual conflict came when a small group of Tarlaxian scout ships entered the solar system near Neptune. Captain Gray Howard stood on the bridge of the battle cruiser Northern Light. The large view screen showed Neptune's blue surface and its moons. Hidden behind those moons was the rest of the 4th Fleet Patrol Group, 5 warships ready for action. Captain, sensors show 5 Sarlaxian vessels approaching Neptune's orbit, reported Lisa Young, the sensor officer. They're in standard search formation. Doesn't look like they expect any resistance. Greg smiled. He was a tall man with dark skin and gray at his temples. 20 years in the Space Navy had taught him patience. They think this is the edge of our territory, undefended and easy to scout. Should we alert them to our presence, sir? Asked his first officer, Sam Davis. Greg thought for a moment. No, let them come a bit closer. I want them well inside our patrol zone before we say hello. The bridge crew watched as the alien ships moved closer. They were sleek vessels with curved hulls that glowed faintly green against the blackness of space. They're scanning the area, sir, Lisa said. Basic scans only, nothing that would detect us behind the moons. Greg nodded. All right, let's introduce ourselves. Move our ships into position. The Northern Light and 4 other human warships moved out from behind Neptune's moons. They formed a half-circle, effectively blocking the Sarlaxian ships from going deeper into the solar system. The alien vessels froze. Their engines flared briefly as if preparing to run. Open a channel, Greg ordered. Channel open, sir. Greg straightened his uniform and smiled. Sarlaxian vessels, this is Captain Greg Howard of the United Earth Navy ship Northern Light. You are currently trespassing in Sol territory. There was a pause before the aliens responded. A Sarlaxian face appeared on screen, scaled skin, wide-set eyes, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. Human vessel, we are on a peaceful scientific mission, the alien commander said. The translation software made his voice sound flat. Greg raised an eyebrow. According to our intelligence, your empire formally declared war on humanity 3 months ago. That makes you enemy combatants in our space. Under normal circumstances, I would be legally authorized to blow you to atoms right now. The Sarlaxian scales changed color slightly, showing fear. The alien crew behind him looked at each other nervously. Greg continued. However, it's almost lunchtime, and our chef made his famous beef stew today. I'd rather enjoy my meal than fill out the paperwork that comes with destroying 5 ships. He leaned forward in his chair. So I'm willing to accept your immediate departure instead. You have 5 minutes to turn around and leave the way you came. After that, we'll have to do this the difficult way. The Sarlaxian commander stared at the human in disbelief. You're letting us leave. 5 minutes, Greg repeated, and I wouldn't come back if I were you. Next patrol might not be as interested in their lunch as I am in mine. He smiled again. Clocks ticking. The alien transmission cut off. The 5 Sarlaxian ships immediately turned around. Their engines glowed brightly as they accelerated away from Neptune, back toward the outer darkness. They're running, sir, Lisa reported, moving at maximum speed. Greg nodded and stood up. Track them until they're out of the system. Send the encounter data to Admiral Murphy on Luna. Yes, sir. Greg walked toward the door. I'll be in the mess hall. That stew really does smell good. As Greg ate lunch with his crew, the Sarlaxian ships sent urgent messages to their command. The reports described human military ships appearing out of nowhere, advanced cloaking technology, and a captain who threatened destruction but seemed more concerned with his meal than with the war. The Sarlaxian High Command received these messages with growing worry. This was not how the humans were supposed to react. The reports suggested that human military capabilities had been vastly underestimated. That night, as Greg Howard wrote his official report about the encounter, he added a personal note. The Sarlaxians appeared genuinely surprised that we're defending our borders. Did they really expect us to leave the door unlocked just because they declared war? If so, this may be easier than we thought. While military forces handled the occasional skirmishes at the edges of human space, Ambassador Olivia Daniels worked the diplomatic channels. The Galactic Council Station was a massive ring in neutral space, home to representatives from over 100 species. Olivia walked through the busy main plaza, nodding politely to aliens who glared at her. Being the representative of a species at war meant many cold shoulders. But not all species followed the Council's lead. She entered a small restaurant that served food from many worlds. In a quiet corner booth sat her lunch appointment, a tall, thin alien with blue-tinted skin and 4 arms. This was Zex, the trade minister of the Venderi Consortium. Ambassador Daniels, Zex said, standing to greet her. "Thank you for joining me." Olivia smiled and sat down. "The pleasure is mine, Minister Zex. I always enjoy Venderi company." A server brought them drinks, water for Olivia, and something glowing purple for Zex. "I must admit," Zex said quietly, many on the council were surprised by humanity's response to the war declaration. "Oh." Olivia sipped her water. What were they expecting? Panic, emergency measures, perhaps even surrender talks. Zex's 4 hands moved in different gestures as he spoke. "Instead, your people seem to barely notice." Olivia laughed softly. "Minister, humanity spent thousands of years fighting itself before we reached the stars. This little political theater hardly registers compared to our own history." The server returned with their food. Olivia had ordered something similar to pasta. Zex had a plate of wiggling blue things that Olivia politely ignored. "Still," Olivia continued, "while this war is a minor inconvenience at best, it does present some interesting opportunities." Zex leaned forward. "What kind of opportunities?" "We've noticed the Sarlaxians have raised their shipping rates by 30% due to wartime security concerns." Olivia twirled her fork in the pasta. "Humanity is prepared to offer a 15% discount to all Venderi merchants who choose our shipping lanes instead." Zex's eyes widened. All 4 hands froze midair. "You're offering cheaper rates during a war." "Why not? Our ships are still running. Our routes are still safe." Olivia took a bite of her food. "In fact, Captain Howard's encounter with those Harlaxian scouts proved our security is quite effective. The Council sanctions are political, not practical." Olivia finished for him. "The Venderi are traders at heart. You go where the deals are good. Right now, that's with us." Zex was quiet for a moment, thinking. The Sarlaxians would be very unhappy. "The Sarlaxians started a war they can't finish," Olivia said. "Meanwhile, the Venderi could increase profits by simply changing which ships carry their goods." As they finished their meal, Zex agreed to bring the offer to his government. Olivia paid the bill and walked him to the door. "One more thing," she said casually. "We're offering similar terms to the Proxy Federation and the Arcturan Alliance. I'd hate for the Venderi to miss out while your competitors take advantage." Zex's skin turned a darker blue. "I'll call an emergency meeting of our trade council today." After Zex left, Olivia checked her schedule. She had similar meetings planned with representatives from 5 other species over the next 2 days, all of them neutral in the conflict, all with significant trading interests. Back in her office, Olivia sent an encrypted message to Earth. Her report was simple: economic diplomacy proceeding as planned. The reply came quickly from Defense Secretary Alan Wright. "Good work. Keep turning their symbolic war into our practical advantage." Within days, representatives from several major galactic powers began quietly approaching Olivia. They all asked similar questions about trade agreements, shipping rates, and special arrangements with Earth. The Sarlaxian plan to isolate humanity economically was falling apart. Instead of being cut off from galactic trade, humans were offering better deals and stealing customers from their supposed enemies. When the Sarlaxian ambassador confronted Olivia in a council hallway, angrily demanding she explain human actions, she simply smiled. "You declared war," she said calmly. "You never mentioned anything about stopping business." 6 months into the war, the Sarlaxians decided it was time for a major attack. Their target was the human colony on Proxima Centauri, the closest star system to Earth. The colony was home to about 50,000 humans who lived under massive domes that protected them from the harsh environment. Commander Frank Peters received the alert in the early morning. The colony's long-range sensors had detected a fleet of Sarlaxian warships heading their way. 20 ships at least, heavily armed and moving fast. Frank was a middle-aged man with a calm face and steady hands. He had been in charge of colony security for 7 years. He sat in the control center, drinking coffee and studying the incoming fleet data. "Should we begin evacuation procedures?" asked his second-in-command, a young woman named Maria Lopez. Frank shook his head. "No need. Wake up the engineering team and tell them it's time to test our defense grid." Maria looked surprised. "The defense grid? But we've never activated it before." "That's why they call it a test," Frank said with a small smile. He finished his coffee and stood up. "It's time to show the Sarlaxians what humans keep in reserve." The colony had been built with defense in mind, but the Galactic Council had never been shown the full extent of human military technology. Hidden under the colony's surface and scattered around the surrounding area were devices that had been developed centuries ago, when humans fought against each other on Earth. As the Sarlaxian fleet entered the star system, Frank gave the order. Engineers activated the defense grid from deep underground control rooms. Power flowed through systems that had been waiting years to be used. The Sarlaxian ships approached the planet, weapons ready to fire. They expected an easy victory over what they thought was a lightly defended colony. Instead, their instruments suddenly went dark. Weapons systems failed. Communications cut out. From the colony's command center, Frank opened a channel to the confused alien admiral. The alien's face appeared on screen, his expression showing a mix of anger and fear. "What have you done to our ships?" the Sarlaxian demanded. "Those are EMP generators," Frank explained calmly. "Electromagnetic pulse. We developed them when we fought amongst ourselves, centuries before we reached the stars. They disable electronic systems without harming the ship or crew." The Sarlaxian looked shocked. "But such technology is primitive." Frank nodded. "Yes, it is. We have lots of old tech like that, gathering dust until someone gives us a reason to use it again." He leaned forward. "Your ships will regain power in about 6 hours. That should give you enough time to think about whether you want to continue this attack. If you decide to leave, we won't stop you. If you decide to stay." He smiled. "Well, EMPs are just one of our old tricks." The Sarlaxian admiral stared at the human in silence for a moment. Then the screen went dark as the alien ship lost the last of its power. Frank turned to Maria. "Send a message to Earth. Include full technical scans of their ships." On Earth, those scans were received by a team of engineers led by Melissa Garcia. She studied the data from the Sarlaxian ships with great interest. "Look at these power systems," she told her team as they gathered around large screens. "They're advanced, but they have clear vulnerabilities we can exploit." One of the younger engineers looked confused. "How can we design countermeasures so quickly?" Melissa smiled. "Humans have been preparing for alien invasions in our fiction for thousands of years. We've imagined every possible scenario, from body snatchers to planet destroyers." She pulled up more detailed scans of the alien ships. "They may have started this war, but we've been rehearsing it since before we discovered fire." The team worked through the night, developing targeted countermeasures for every Sarlaxian system they could identify. 6 hours later, when the Sarlaxian fleet regained power, they found themselves facing a colony that was far better defended than they expected. After a brief discussion among their commanders, the aliens turned their ships around and left the system. Frank Peters watched them go, then sent a simple message to Earth. "Test successful." They ran. After several failed military confrontations, the Sarlaxians tried a new approach. They convinced the Galactic Council to impose strict economic sanctions against Earth and all human colonies. The Council formally restricted trade with humans, hoping to pressure them into submission. On Mars, Paul Rodriguez received news of the sanctions while inspecting the dome farms. Paul was the agricultural director for the Mars colony, responsible for growing food for the 3 million humans who called the Red Planet home. Director Rodriguez, his assistant called, running across the field of wheat growing under the dome's artificial light. "Have you heard the news? The Council has cut off all trade with human worlds." Paul looked up from the wheat he was examining. He was a short man with strong hands from years of actual farming before becoming a director. "Yes, I got the alert an hour ago." "Aren't you worried? How will this affect our food production?" Paul smiled and walked toward the eastern edge of the dome. "Karen, do you know what this means?" he asked, pointing to the empty, rocky area beyond the current farm zone. Karen shook her head, confused. "It means we finally got justification to expand hydroponics into the eastern crater. I've been trying to get approval for that project for years. But the sanctions are exactly the push we needed," Paul finished. "Mars has always worked to become self-sufficient. Now we have the perfect reason to speed up our plans." He pulled out his tablet and started making notes. "We'll need to redirect resources from export crops to local food production, expand the water reclamation system, accelerate the soil enrichment program." Karen stared at him. "You're actually excited about this?" "Of course," Paul said. "Nothing motivates humans like someone telling us we can't do something. By trying to hurt us, the Council just gave us the kick we needed to become truly independent." Back on Earth, entrepreneur Nicole Foster sat in her office in Sydney, Australia. Her company operated tourism ships that took wealthy humans on trips to see the wonders of nearby star systems. The sanctions meant all her planned routes through Council space were now closed. Instead of panicking, Nicole gathered her team for an emergency meeting. "The sanctioned routes are closed," she told them, standing in front of a star map. "So we're going to create new ones." She revealed her plan: Wharton specials, discounted vacation packages that bypassed Council space entirely. The new routes would take tourists through previously unexplored sectors, offering views and experiences no other species had seen. "Our new marketing campaign will use the slogan, 'See the galaxy they didn't want you to explore,'" Nicole explained. "We'll turn their sanctions into an adventure opportunity." Her team loved it. Within days, they started receiving bookings from humans eager to be among the first to travel these new routes. Across human space, others had similar reactions. On Luna, manufacturers began creating replacements for imported alien goods. On Europa, scientists accelerated research into new technologies to fill gaps left by the sanctions. Even in supposedly neutral spaces, the sanctions proved difficult to enforce. Vessels from various species found creative ways to continue trading with humans, often through complex networks of intermediaries or in secret locations away from Council monitoring. In a bar on a space station near the border of human space, two alien captains met quietly. One was a Vendari merchant, the other a Xarlaxian inspector. "You were spotted near Earth last week," the Xarlaxian said. "Violating Council sanctions is punishable by heavy fines." The Vendari captain pushed a credit chip across the table. "I was never near Earth." The Xarlaxian took the bribe. "No, I suppose you weren't." As he left, the Vendari muttered, "Your sanctions are hurting your own people more than the humans." It was true. Trade restrictions were causing prices to rise throughout Council space, while human worlds adapted and found new opportunities. What was meant to isolate humanity was instead revealing how dependent many alien economies have become on human goods and services. On the Galactic Council station, a frustrated Xarlaxian ambassador demanded to know why the sanctions weren't working. The answer came from an unlikely source, a junior aide who whispered, "Because humans see obstacles as challenges, not barriers." Nearly a year into the conflict, the Galactic Council tried a new approach. They launched a massive propaganda campaign across all Council worlds. The message was simple. Humans were dangerous, unpredictable barbarians who could not be trusted. Council species were shown images of human history's wars and violence. News programs featured experts discussing the savage nature of humans. Public spaces displayed warnings about human unpredictability. The Carlaxians, who led this effort, expected it would turn public opinion firmly against Earth. They were wrong. Instead of creating fear and hatred, the campaign sparked intense curiosity about humans. Alien populations became fascinated with human culture. Underground networks began sharing human music, art, films, and literature throughout Council space. In Chicago, Professor Ellen Wright gave a lecture to a packed auditorium at the university. She specialized in xenoanthropology, the study of alien cultures and how they interacted with humans. The Council's propaganda campaign has backfired in the most interesting way, she told the students. They wanted to tell the galaxy that we're dangerous monsters, but forgot to mention we're also incredibly interesting. She showed slides of new alien fashion trends that copied human styles, pictures of secretly operating human-style restaurants on Council worlds, videos of alien youth attempting to dance to human music. Our contradictions make us compelling, Ellen continued. We create beautiful art about our ugliest moments. We write songs about heartbreak and stories about our fears. We're the galaxy's dangerous bad boys, and everyone loves a rebel. A student raised her hand. But won't this just convince the Council that humans are corrupting their societies? Ellen smiled. That's exactly what's happening. The Carlaxian government has already tried to ban human entertainment. The result? Black market demand doubled overnight. Across Council space, the phrase Earth style became slang for anything exciting or forbidden. Young aliens would meet in secret locations to watch human movies or listen to human music. Some even tried to learn English or other human languages. On a mid-level Council world called Brill, a Carlaxian enforcement officer named Zexkar raided an illegal club. Inside, he found dozens of young aliens from different species dancing to human music. The walls were decorated with images of Earth landmarks. The drinks were copied from human recipes. This place is closed by order of the Council, Zexkar announced. A young Vendari approached him. How much to look the other way? She asked quietly. Zexkar had planned to refuse any bribes, but then he noticed the music playing. It had a rhythm unlike anything in Carlaxian culture. It made him want to move. What is this sound? He asked despite himself. Humans call it jazz, the Vendari said. We have much more. Would you like to hear it? 2 hours later, Zexkar sat in the back room of the club, headphones on, listening to a collection of human music from across Earth's history. He had never heard anything like it. The next day, he reported the club was empty when he arrived. On the Galactic Council station, Ambassador Olivia Daniels received reports about the growing human cultural influence. She forwarded them to Earth with a simple note. They tried to make us monsters. They made us celebrities instead. Defense Secretary Alan Wright shared this information with President Powell during their weekly meeting. So now we're winning a culture war we didn't even know we were fighting. The president asked with amusement. It appears so, Alan replied. The Carlaxians don't understand that trying to forbid something often makes it more attractive. The president laughed. My teenage son taught me that lesson years ago. When Carlaxian authorities increased efforts to restrict access to human culture, they only drove it further underground and made it more desirable. Merchant ships began carrying hidden data drives full of human books, music, and films alongside their regular cargo. These became the most valuable contraband in Council space. The war that began with a formal declaration was now being fought with songs, stories, and style. And humanity was winning without even trying. 18 months after the declaration of war, humanity finally decided to take the conflict seriously. Not because of military pressure or economic hardship. The skirmishes remained small, and human worlds were thriving despite the sanctions. They decided to act because, as President Powell put it in a private meeting, it's becoming annoying. In the Oval Office, she met with Admiral John Murphy, who had been promoted to head Earth's Unified Defense Command, and Defense Secretary Alan Wright. "So we're finally going to respond?" John asked. The president nodded. "The constant small attacks, the propaganda, the trade disruptions, none of it hurts us much. But it's like having a mosquito in your bedroom. Eventually, you want to deal with it so you can sleep." "What do you propose?" Alan asked. "Operation Mild Inconvenience," the president said with a slight smile. "It's time to show the Xarlaxians and the Council what happens when humans actually pay attention to a problem." The operation began 3 days later. Throughout Council space, dormant human intelligence networks suddenly activated. Data flowed into Earth's military command from agents and sources that had been quietly gathering information for years. On the Council station, 3 senior representatives were publicly revealed to have taken bribes from the Xarlaxians to support the war declaration. Their own financial records provided the proof, mysteriously delivered to news agencies across the galaxy. In Xarlaxian territory, key military supply chains inexplicably failed. Shipments went missing. Communication systems developed strange glitches. Nothing major, just enough to cause confusion and delay. At the same time, human warships appeared near important Xarlaxian outposts, demonstrated previously unknown weapons capabilities with precise strikes on empty space, then disappeared before they could be tracked. From his command center on Luna Base, Admiral John Murphy transmitted a message to every world in Council space. "This is Admiral John Murphy of Earth. For 18 months, we have allowed this so-called war to run its course out of respect for galactic conventions. But our patience has limits. Humanity didn't expand to the stars by being easy to intimidate. We fought ourselves for millennia before finding others to talk to. We've survived plagues, climate collapse, and our own nuclear weapons. Your declaration of war wasn't even in our top 10 concerns this fiscal quarter. However, we're now allocating actual attention to this conflict, which should concern you greatly. We're prepared to offer generous terms for immediate cessation of hostilities. Alternatively, we can show you what happens when humans actually decide to fight back. You have 24 hours to respond." The message was accompanied by detailed files showing exactly how much Earth knew about Xarlaxian defenses, Council politics, and secret operations throughout the galaxy. Just enough information to make it clear that humans had been watching and learning all along. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session within hours. The Xarlaxian ambassador looked pale and sick as reports continued to arrive about more minor incidents affecting their worlds. The vote to re-sign the war declaration was 81-0. No one, not even the Xarlaxians, voted to continue. 2 days later, Ambassador Olivia Daniels sat in a council chamber as representatives signed the peace accord. Many looked nervous, casting glances at the human who sat calmly checking her watch. "Is there a problem?" Ambassador Daniels asked the council chairperson. "Not at all," Olivia replied with a polite smile. "But if we could move this along, I have dinner reservations at a new Venderi restaurant back on Earth." As she left the chamber after the signing, several representatives approached her with private offers for renewed trade agreements, cultural exchange programs, and diplomatic visits. The Xarlaxian ambassador avoided her completely. 5 years later, the almost war was barely mentioned in human history classes. It had become a small footnote. The time some aliens declared war and humans barely noticed until it became irritating enough to address. On the anniversary of the peace accord, John Murphy, now retired and tending a small farm in Colorado, received a message from Olivia Daniels, who remained Earth's representative to the stars. "The Xarlaxian Emperor's daughter is a huge fan of human music," she wrote. "They're requesting a cultural exchange program. Apparently, we're more valuable as friends than enemies. Who would have thought?" John smiled, closed the message, and returned to watering his tomatoes. The stars could wait. His vegetables needed attention now.